it's a mystery, so you have to have like the ending in sight and what is happening, and it's just I can't like.
Sorry, I'm trying to listen to you.
And you hear my dogs in the background?
Yeah. That's all I can hear.
They're having a great time.
They are. I love it. But yes, to whatever you were saying. Hi everyone. How's it going?
Hi.
I'm here.
Welcome to our second book podcast. This month we say month, but we're not really doing it by month. So this book, book number 2, is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, and Rose is holding it up if you're watching the video. And we just read the first act, which is 79 pages in the actual book, I think, and on certain e-readers that's different, but the first act. So that is what we are discussing today.
Indeed.
I know that it's a murder mystery, especially because of the prologue. So the whole time that I'm reading this, I have like this anxiety trying to figure out who's gonna die and like which character that I'm falling in love with is gonna die. And this whole time, like in certain scenes when it starts getting like, especially the end of the act, which I'm sure we'll get to, when it starts getting a little chaotic, I'm like, oh, is somebody gonna die? Oh no, is this gonna be where they, and like this whole time there's just this like suspense and it's stressful, but I'm also really enjoying it.
Yes,
for sure.
There's definitely been a few parts where I was like, this is it. This is what we're going to find out.
And if it's the person that I think it's going to be, well, there's 2 people I think it might be. One of them I'm going to be upset. And the other one, I'm not going to be upset.
Well, who are you thinking?
If it's James, I'm going to cry because I think I am in love with James. And then if it's Richard, I'm going to be like, yes, fucking kill him.
Yeah. For sure. Which is why it probably won't be Richard, because like he's going to be the easy suspect.
Yeah, but I think it could be Richard because I think James might do it. And then like, who else would Oliver go to jail for other than James, you know?
Oliver goes to jail?
Yeah, he's the one in the prologue he's in the jail.
Oh, right.
I think he'd go to jail for Meredith.
I think so too, yeah.
I don't know.
That's
and
right.
Meredith
I should have gone back to reread
Richard.
the prologue.
I know, but she's.
I think it's going to be James and Richard. The conflict there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I do have to say though, the one thing that surprises me because it is like a murder mystery is I thought we would have gotten some breadcrumbs by now. I thought we would have gotten like some, just like a little bit, or like a flashback to the murder, or like just like something to kind of, I mean, obviously, yeah, we know Oliver's in jail, but I don't know. I like this whole time I've kind of been expecting like some sort of little, I don't know, breadcrumb.
I think we are getting breadcrumbs, and that's what most of my highlights are. I think the characters that the players are being cast as and the lines that they are giving us are actually some breadcrumbs. Like I marked.
Yeah.
Like especially like right at the beginning, it's page 10 in the paperback, which is just scene 1 when Oliver is studying his passage.
His audition one.
With Pericles, yeah. When they mention one sin I know, another doth provoke, murders as near to lust as flame to smoke. Like right off the bat.
Yeah, true.
And then 2 pages later on page 12, he says, I think it's Oliver again. No, I think that might be James saying this, where he says, your time will come to be the tragic hero. Just wait for spring. which I think is really ironic because Oliver spends his time. Yeah, because he's the one that goes to jail, which makes him like the tragic hero. He takes the place of whoever actually committed the murder. So I think that there is some foreshadowing going on in here, but it's the type of foreshadowing that you don't see until like you do a reread or like once it's exposed, like once you actually know what's going on.
It's not an obvious breadcrumb.
Right. Isn't Richard playing Caesar and James is playing Brutus, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I feel like that's a clue too.
Yeah.
So maybe,
but that's the way they say that it always plays out. I think the Macbeth part where Richard just like doesn't have a part at all and James ends up being Macbeth, I think that is the more important character roles, I guess, because it shows the turning of the tides and the changing of everything.
Fair enough. Yeah, I just meant because Brutus kills Caesar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. True. Mm-hmm. So I was just wondering if that was like foreshadowing that like James might kill Richard.
Yeah, and on page 33, which is act... I don't know what act this is.
Scene.
Sorry, you're right.
Scene
it's all
6.
one act. Scene 6, their teacher says, "Permit me to pose another question. What is more important, that Caesar is assassinated or that he is assassinated by his intimate friends?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed that.
Same.
Yeah.
I have that highlighted as well.
I was just going to ask how you guys feel about Oliver thus far as the narrator. Like, what are your thoughts?
It seems like you have thoughts.
I do. I find it interesting because it's kind of like the story's being told in third person, but it's first person, and it's Oliver. But I don't feel like...
It's third person omniscient.
Well, no, because we don't know the thoughts and feelings of all the other characters. So he is narrating just from his, perspective. It is just first person. But I don't feel like we're getting the usual sense of the narrator that you get. I don't feel like we're getting a lot of Oliver's thoughts and feelings, like a little bit, but I just don't feel like I even know who he is yet. It's all just being like, it's like through his eyes, but I don't feel like we have any idea of what's going on in his head or like who he is.
I was just going to say, I feel like the only part, like personal thing that we find out about Oliver is his friendship with James. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's the only, intimate part of his life that we know about.
I think that also just might be partly because of how Oliver sees himself as a side character. Like he's not important. His thoughts and feelings aren't important. He's just there to be the supporting character, which I think is really interesting that he is the narrator, which makes him the most important person in this story when he is the supporting character in his own story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I like what you said about the fact that he's the side character or whatever. Mm-hmm. I mean, that kind of makes sense that he's not putting himself in the forefront of the story. It's interesting because you don't read a lot of first person narratives like that.
Mm-hmm. No, there's a lot of this book that's just so different and interesting to read how it is written. I mean, just the fact that it's acts with scenes instead of chapters. And it's, even some parts where they're not necessarily... Because we have some excerpts of the play in there, right? Which is cool. But we also have other areas where they're having dialogue, but it's written like it would be in a play with name. Mm-hmm. I think it's so cool just how she decided to write.
How it's a blend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I noticed that as well with some of the prose, where it's not just every line half-inch indented. There is some prose that's written almost like poetry, where a different line will flow differently than the other, where one will be 3 inches indented so that there's that physical space where you see that physical space that represents, say, a pause in the dialogue instead of the normal novel way of writing it, where sure every dialogue gets its own line, but it's all like half-inch spaced in quotation marks.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think a lot of times like she does that when they're speaking in Shakespearean, quotes to each other, which I think is fun and like so nerdy, and I love it. Yeah, like on this, I don't know what page it would be for you guys, but what scene is this? Scene 2, where Richard does that. He does like a whole sonnet. Oh, but I think he was actually rehearsing that. Anyway, but you know what I'm saying. They do speak to each other.
No, they do it a lot. They did it at the after party. Like,
yeah.
Trying to get the others to play chicken with them. They were doing a back and forth with it. Yeah.
Yeah, they do that a lot, and it's perfect. Like, the lines that are pulled are perfect for the scene. And it's like you said that what this author has a master's, or she teach literature.
She holds a master's degree in Shakespeare Studies from King's College London.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, her level of Shakespearean knowledge has to be so intense to be able to pull the different lines to fit her scene and not like that scene. Like, imagine just what's going through her head as a writer. And having the Shakespeare play playing, her story playing, and then, like, the future of her story playing. Because you have to, like, it's a mystery, so you have to have, like, the ending in sight and what is happening. And it's just, I can't, like...
Sorry, I'm trying to listen to you.
And you hear my dogs in the background?
Yeah. That's all I can hear.
They're having a great time.
They are. I love it. But yes, to whatever you were saying.
Completely. No, she's... I just like her writing style in general. Really... She's very smart. I also like the idea of the type of school that they're at, where it's solely Shakespeare or Shakespearean work, and each grade level does a particular type of Shakespeare play. Like, now that they're fourth years, now they're doing tragedies. It's just so cool, like, how she thought about this.
And how each year they have the possibility to be, like, kicked out if they're not good enough.
Yeah.
That's super stressful.
That conversation that Oliver relived with his father about, not wanting him to go to this particular school because of the uncertainties and how it wasn't like a typical college.
Right.
Just, I think that really speaks to the format of this book too. It's unconventional in that regard.
Yeah, very unconventional, but I love it.
But for those of you that haven't read the act yet, if you are one of our listeners and not one of our readers, it's not all just like stuck up preppy people talking in Shakespeare. It's also hilarious and modern as well. Like, on page 47 of the paperback, which is scene 10, near the end of scene 10, like, there's this dialogue where they're in an argument and Richard is being an ass because that is just kind of who he is. And there's this dialogue where James starts off and says, "It's been a long night," James said flatly. "If it makes you feel any better, Meredith has just bitten Richard's head off." "What for?" I asked. "For being a jackass," she said, as if it should have been obvious. "Just because she's sleeping with him doesn't mean she can't see when he's being a shithead." So, like, yes, there's Shakespeare, but it's blended into modern time perfectly, and it's still hilarious, and you still get the character banter that makes it really fun to read.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think
completely.
I think she does a really good job of, like, having all 7 main characters involved, because, it can be hard to write, like, to have that many characters. I feel like sometimes when you're explaining what this character is doing in that one, like, you can lose the story. That's happened to me in other books when there's too many characters in one scene. It's like, wait, what the fuck is happening? But she does it pretty seamlessly, I think.
And each character is so unique and maintains their own personality throughout. And it can be difficult also to maintain the personalities of characters as well without them getting wishy-washy or feeling flat. All of these characters are really well defined as well.
Yeah, they really are. Yeah,
Yeah,
she just
for the most part.
impresses me with her writing and how she puts it all together so far. And we're only, like I said, 80 pages in, so...
But the last scene of Act 1 is when they do their Macbeth. And the way that they do Macbeth, like, I wish I went to this school. I just want to see it. Like, all of these plays.
Know.
But it's so cool.
So, for Halloween, each of them gets given a role. And they're given the role in an invitation from their teacher. And no one else knows which role they're to play. They don't rehearse. Sorry, my dog in the background. But anyway, they don't rehearse, and nobody knows who's who. And then on Halloween night, they all show up and they just put on the show. They just put on Macbeth, basically improv style. And it's absolutely amazing. And the way they describe it with the witches coming out of the water and Hecate coming out of the water, and Oliver being covered in blood as Brutus. He's Brutus, right? No, that's
not in Macbeth. Banquio.
That's the one. Brutus is Caesar.
Yeah, something like that.
Banquio. And the play itself is absolutely amazing. The way that they go about it, but then the after party of the play happens, and this is where my anxiety just skyrocketed.
Yeah, things got a little intense. Real quick before that, though, when James was helping Oliver get covered in the blood, did you guys think it was going to be human blood? Because I was like, oh my god, maybe it's not fake blood, it's actual blood, somebody's dead, this is somebody's blood that he's being covered in, and it's going to turn out that he's going to get out there and be in actual human blood, and it's going to be super fucked up. I was expecting that.
I didn't even think about that, but that would have been such a stressful way for them to find the dead person, just to
that's what I'm saying,
have Oliver be covered in their blood. Oh my god,
I know, that's what I thought was happening. I was waiting for it, but then it didn't come to fruition. I was like, oh,
I didn't even think about that. I would have been if that had happened, I probably would have just screamed. That would have been fucking crazy.
Oh yeah, I thought that's what was going to happen too. My anxiety was going up and up and up and up. I'm like, here it is, here it is, we're going to find out who's dead. I thought maybe at that point I thought Richard was dead.
Because
he's
his blood.
Where's Richard? That's what I thought too. Yeah. But then Richard was there, so
I didn't think about that at all. Oh my god.
Yeah.
But that's not what happens. But
that's not what happens.
That's not what happened.
No. But then things get a little crazy when they're playing chicken.
Yeah, so they're playing chicken in the pool, and I thought Alexander was just gonna drown because he's drunk and dumb. I thought he was just gonna drown. I thought that was just gonna be it. And then Oliver and Meredith go in and they start playing chicken, and then I was like, fuck, it's gonna be Meredith, or one of them is gonna die. And then James. I really hope James isn't the one that dies. I like him. James and Richard get in a fight. He shoves James' face, under the water.
And everyone literally has to jump on top of him to get him to stop.
Yeah. You just have to read this scene. Even if you're not reading this book with us, just this scene itself is just so crazy. And it's hard to describe it without, with the same intensity that it's written to.
For sure.
It is agreed. Amazing. The scene, the intensity, the suspense is amazing. And then at the end, the last paragraph, or even the last line, it's just Oliver and James sitting on the beach. And Oliver says, something changed irrevocably. In those few dark minutes, James was submerged as if the lack of oxygen had caused all our molecules to rearrange. So this is the turning point in the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes me think that James is gonna just snap.
Yeah.
Because they mentioned that, like, he plays the villain almost routinely up until this point. Like, that's the role that he fits into, which is, I think, might be foreshadowing that he's going to be the one to kill somebody, probably Richard. But I don't know.
I don't know. That feels too easy, though.
I know. But, like, who else would Oliver really go to jail for 10 years for other than James? Because they talk about how they're such good friends and how they room together. I totally think there's a little, like, gay relationship going on.
I was waiting for that.
Maybe I'm just gay, but there's, like, a homoerotic vibe between these two.
Yeah. But then Oliver also is, like, in a stupor over Meredith because she's gorgeous. So Oliver has to be at least bi. Yeah. But, yeah, I totally think that Oliver and James are gay, but we'll see. We'll see.
I was waiting for it to come out.
Rubbing the blood on him, and then James wants him to sit on the beach with him.
Or even in the beginning when they were describing the room that they share and how they were undressing and taking their shirts off, and then they were discarding their pants and stuff. And then I was just waiting for it to end with Oliver walking over and getting into bed with James.
Well, there's also that part where they're talking about when James is training to be, like, a cat on stage.
Oh, yeah, and then he
like, randomly pounces on Oliver, who squeals like a little girl. Yeah, it's definitely, there's some gay vibe.
There's a vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there.
It's a vibe for sure.
So I hope that turns into something.
Me
That's
too.
probably why I like James so much. Just gay.
Because he's a little gay, yeah. Totally. I feel that.
I mean, it needs a gay theater kid.
Yeah, it's like a prerequisite.
You can't have theater
Yeah, exactly.
without some queerness.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's just not allowed because that's not reality.
Especially Shakespeare, like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Out of the 7 of them, there has to be somebody.
Hella gay.
Yeah.
Hella gay.
All right. Well.
Yeah.
Well. That's all I have to say. I took a lot of notes. I did a lot of highlighting, but it was all just like not dumb stuff, but things like, this looks amazing. I wish I could see this in real life, or like highlighting lines that I liked.
Yeah, I didn't take a lot of notes, and it doesn't mean I didn't like what I was reading. I took a couple notes that I thought were foreshadowing, and then the rest of the time I was just enjoying it.
Yeah.
I was ready. I had my tabs ready at the points where I was like, we're going to find out who died. And I was like prepared. Like the blood scene, I was like, here we go. And then I would put the tab down because we wouldn't find out.
Right, exactly. But it's definitely got me wanting to, did I tell you about the No Fear Shakespeare books where it's like, on one side you have the Shakespeare play, and then the other side it's like modern translation. I've been wanting to get those, but like now as I'm reading this, I'm like, okay, I really need to order those because I really want to like dive into those.
Yeah.
Rose and I were talking about that at work the other day, that we needed to get Caesar.
Yeah, I was talking about buying Julius Caesar, but I just don't have time right now to read it. I don't have time to do it.
I know. I don't really either, but at someday, at some point. Because I have a book of Shakespeare's sonnets, and like I really enjoy that. But now I need to dive into the actual plays.
I don't have anything more on If We Were Villains. I'm just excited to keep going.
Yeah, I'm excited to keep
same.
going as well. So what we're going to do is, I know that we just started this book, If We Were Villains. However, I have had some feedback from people who listen to our podcast that they wish we put out our like next book sooner so that they would have time to get it from the library. So today, which is our first podcast for this book, our April book, we're going to give you the 5 choices for our May book. Hopefully we can reach a decision and give you the announcement
Soon.
2 weeks or more before we would start it, so that you'll have time to get the book.
Yeah.
But what's cool about this next pick is we decided to do a nonfiction, so all of our choices are nonfiction.
Switching it up. Indeed. Got to get a little nonfic in there every so often. Fine, she says reluctantly.
So all of them, like we said, are nonfiction, but they're all a little different. They're all on different topics. So the first one, Pandora's Jar by Natalie Haynes. I'm just going to read the synopsis that is on the back here. The tellers of Greek myths, historically men, have routinely sidelined the female characters. When they do take a larger role, women are often portrayed as monstrous, vengeful, or just plain evil, like Pandora, blamed for causing all the world suffering and wickedness when she opened that forbidden box. But, as Natalie Haynes reveals, in ancient Greek myths, there was no box. It was a jar, which is far more likely to tip over. In Pandora's Jar, the broadcaster, writer, stand-up comedian, and passionate classicist turns the tables, putting the women of Greek myths on equal footing with the men. With wit, humor, and savviness, Hayes revolutionizes our understanding of epic poems, stories, and plays, resurrecting them from a woman's perspective and tracing the origins of their mythic female characters. She looks at women such as Jocasta, Oedipus. It's plural.
Oedipus?
I don't know, but it's also...
Is it O-E?
Oedipus? But it's possessive. How do I say the S's? Oedipuses. I can't say that at all. All right. Oedipuses is...
Like pisses and then Oedipuses?
Yeah, I don't like it. Oedipus's mother turned lover and wife. Turned fruity and sticking point. At once the cleverest person in the story and yet often unnoticed. She considers Helen of Troy, whose marriage to Paris caused the Trojan War, as somewhat uneven response to her decision to leave her husband for another man. She demonstrates how the vilified Medea was like an ancient Beyonce, getting her revenge on the man who hurt and betrayed her, if by extreme measures. And she turns her eye to Medusa, the original monstered woman, who had her hair turned to snakes as punishment for being raped. Pandora's Jar brings nuance and care to millennia-old myths and legends and asks the question, why are we so quick to villainize these women in the first place, and so eager to accept the stories we've been told?
Medusa's hair turned to snakes after she was raped?
Yeah. Yep.
I did not know that.
Really?
I did not know that was the story. And then she became this terrible monster all because she was fucking raped. Mm-hmm. That makes me really upset. That makes me really fucking angry.
But there's also a spin on it that she was given that power to be able to get her revenge as well. So it was a punishment, but also was, I don't know what word I'm looking for.
Empowering?
Yes, I guess. It was kind of like a gift given with the perception of punishment for the men, if that makes sense. I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say.
I understand what you're trying to say. I'm just trying to think how I feel about it. Like, I guess, but like she shouldn't have to, I don't know. Yeah, anyway, there's a whole thing. But that book sounds very interesting, and it's definitely something I want to read. Yeah. All right, next one. What's next on the docket?
Women who run
with the wolves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is Amy's pick.
Yeah, you want to pull up the synopsis, Amy?
Yeah. Okay, so Women Who Run with Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. The synopsis is this. Within every woman, there lives a powerful force filled with good instincts, passionate creativity, and ageless knowing. She is the wild woman who represents the instinctual nature of women, but she is an endangered species. For though the gifts of wildish nature belong to us at birth, society's attempt to civilize us into rigid roles has muffled the deep, life-giving messages of our own souls. In Women Who Run with the Wolves, Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes unfolds rich intercultural myths, fairy tales, folk tales, and stories, many from her own traditions, in order to help women reconnect with the fierce, healthy, visionary attributes of this instinctual nature. Through the stories and commentaries in this remarkable book, we retrieve, examine, love, and understand the wild woman and hold her against our deep psyches as one who is both magic and medicine. And then it says, Dr. Estes has created a new lexicon for describing the female psyche. Fertile and life-giving, it is a psychology of women in the truest sense, a knowing of the soul.
That one sounds interesting too.
Yeah, for sure.
It's very popular. We sell it a lot at the store.
Indeed.
Indubitably.
Indubitably. Okay, so then next up is Crying in H Mart, which Steph, that was one of your picks.
It was. So Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. In this exquisite story of family, food, grief, and endurance, Michelle Zonner proves herself far more than a dazzling singer, songwriter, and guitarist. With humor and heart, she tells of growing up one of the few Asian American kids at her school in Eugene, Oregon, of struggling with her mother's particular high expectations of her, of a painful adolescence, of treasured months spent in her grandmother's tiny apartment in Seoul, where she and her mother would bond, late at night over heaping plates of food. As she grew up, moving to the East Coast for college, finding work in the restaurant industry and performing gigs with her fledgling band and meeting the man who would become her husband, her Koreanness began to feel even more distant, even as she found the life she wanted to live. It was her mother's diagnosis of terminal cancer when Michelle was 25 that forced a reckoning with her identity and brought her to reclaim the gifts of taste, language, and history her mother had given her. Vivacious and plain-spoken, lyrical and honest, Zonner's voice is as radiantly alive on the page as it is on stage, rich with intimate anecdotes that will resonate widely and complete with family photos. Crying in H Mart is a book to cherish, share, and reread.
That one sounds good. And that one was a Book of the Year finalist for 2021, right?
I don't know. I know that.
I'm like
believe so.
99% sure it was one of the
think it was,
finalists.
yes.
Yeah.
I know it was
think
on
so.
one of Obama's book recommendations for 2021.
Yeah, it was on a lot of book lists, and yeah, for sure, I think it was one of the runners up, but it ultimately lost out to Lyrics,
Yeah.
that's obviously questionable.
But let's not get into that.
Yeah, I'm gonna get into that. Okay, next up is Somebody's Daughter, a memoir by Ashley C. Ford. Okay, so Ashley C. Ford's voice is what makes this memoir special. She's candid, inquisitive, vulnerable, and present in the moments she shares, especially those of her childhood. From the absence of her father and the shocking revelation of his incarceration, to the grandmother she adored and the men who both protected and hurt her, Somebody's Daughter shows how people and the critical moments, both big and small, can become hardwired into our lives and affect the way we react to and experience the world. An affirming and probing memoir from a writer who will hopefully have a long and celebrated literary career. I have heard nothing but amazing things about this book.
Same.
And I heard her speak on Glennon Doyle's podcast. It was like a month or two ago. And it was really powerful. So
awesome.
That made me want to read this book. Yeah.
All right, so Gender and Our Brains by Gina Rippon. Rippon, however you say it. The description. A breakthrough work in neuroscience and an incisive corrective to a long history of damaging pseudoscience, finally debunking the myth that there is a biological binary between male and female brains. For decades, if not centuries, science has backed up society's simple dictum that men and women are hardwired differently, that the world is divided by two different kinds of brains, male and female. However, new research in neuroimaging suggests that this is little more than neurotrash. In this powerful argued work, acclaimed professor of cognitive neuroimaging Gina Rippon unpacks the stereotypes that bombard us from our earliest moments and shows how these messages mold our ideas of ourselves and even shape our brains. Taking us back through centuries of sexism, Gender and Our Brains reveals how science has been misinterpreted or misused to ask the wrong questions. Instead of challenging the status quo, we are still bound by outdated stereotypes and assumptions. However, by exploring new, cutting-edge neuroscience, Rippon urges us to move beyond a binary view of our brains and instead to see these complex organs as highly individualized, profoundly adaptable, and full of unbound potential.
Rock and roll.
I like it.
I'm going to buy this one either way. I already put it on hold, so.
For sure. Yeah, honestly, all these sound really good.
Yeah, they do.
Well, fantastic. So that's our
Love
5.
it.
Yeah. I'm excited for Nonfiction Month. Nonfiction May.
All right, so we have talked about where we are with If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. And then we discussed and, not explained, we read the synopsis.
Synopses? Is that a word?
What's the plural? We read the descriptions.
I feel like it's synopses. Anyway, don't quote me on it.
I don't know.
I'll look it up.
Anyways, we read the descriptions of the 5 books that we are thinking about reading for Nonfiction May. It's a thing now. We're calling it Nonfiction May.
Nonfiction May, yeah.
Yep, Nonfiction May. So we will have that on our Discord if you would like to vote for them. I think we'll have a link below this video. Yes, is that how that works? Yes. Yeah, so I guess that's it, guys.
And we'll see you back here next week.
Yeah. Bye.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
All right, everyone. Have a good night.